Welcome to Inside Politics with Kevin Klein, beyond the headlines, beyond the spin. Straight facts, sharp analysis, and common sense conversation you won't hear anywhere else. Let's get started.
And I would say to the goofballs out front, if you have an issue, you have an issue with me.
Who you meet with at a business level like this?
Yeah, I think we share broad. It's a good question.
Hi, I'm Kevin Klein. Welcome to another edition of Inside Politics. Today I'm joined by two of my colleagues from the Winnipeg Sun, columnist Geoff Currier and columnist Lawrence Pinsky, KC, King's Counsel, and a former human rights adjudicator. We also have two special guests that we'll get to in just a couple of seconds. On today's show, we got a lot to talk about. We have some comments that were made by Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew, who is, has been kind of riding the polls very high among premiers in Canada. He made a comment about some protesters in response to something that was said about Charlie Kirk. We've got a Mark Carney clip of Mark our Prime Minister trying to answer, who he saw when he was on his world tour, which is kind of interesting, and a tweet that came out today too from the Liberals and Mark Carney about trade. But first, we want to start off with a situation that I'm going to be brutally honest about. Geoff and I aren't really that familiar with what's happening. And this is why we wanted to have it on the show, is because there's a lot of other things happening around the world that people are not taking note of. It's like we look at one or two issues that are happening in the world. One was the big Ukrainian-Russian war, and nobody's really talking about that anymore. And then we have what's happening in Gaza. But there's so many other things, and we'll talk about that with being, if you're a Christian, the worst place to be is in Nigeria. We're going to speak a little bit about that. Yeah. We have two guests today, Carlos and Sarah. Sarah is actually in Syria, so we'll talk to her in a moment. But Carlos, could you're new to Canada. You just became a Canadian citizen a few years ago. You live in Damascus, Manitoba, so welcome to the team.
Thank you.
So why don't you enlighten people watching the show and Geoff and I about what is actually happening within the Druze communities?
Well, I'll just start briefly. As all of you know, the Syrian regime fell in last December, and Damascus, the capital, was taken over by HTS, which is a former terrorist group that associated with al-Qaeda. Syria, was known as a united country for so many people around the world, but it's not. It's a multi-ethnic country, so it has many different provinces, and those two provinces dominated by ethno-religious groups. So the province where we came from originally is called Sueda, or Mount Druze, which is dominantly Druze. It has a Christian minority, Orthodox Catholic Christians, and dominated by Druze, and it has a very, very, very small Muslim minority in there. So when the new, I don't want to call it regime, when the de facto authority took over the capital, Damascus, they have an Islamic and radical Islamic backgrounds. They were terrorists associated with al-Qaeda. They wanted to impose their ideology on minorities, especially Christians, Druze, and Alawites. So here where the persecution started. So the Druze people in the south, can I talk a little bit about Druze? What is the Druze?
Yeah,
Druze people is an ethno-religious minority. It's a very ancient faith, very ancient ethnic group in the Levant, basically Lebanon and Israel. And many of the Druze people moved a few hundred years ago, 400 years ago, to Mount Druze, which is a province in southern Syria. It was not Syria back then. It was under the Ottoman Sultanate or Empire. Druze people are naturally secular. So it's a unique religion. It has an ancient roots. It goes back to Prophet Jethro, and it was living in secrecy, and they were hidden in the mountains because of the Islamic persecution across the centuries. Druze people are naturally secular because there's the religious sect and the what do you call it, the civil, or like the normal people. You can switch between both, but religious people won't harass you. You can do whatever you want. This is how Druze people are. They are naturally secular. So that doesn't work with radical Muslims. So now they are the leaders in Syria. So they wanted to impose their new regime, their new states. Druze people rejected that, led by our religious leader, Sheikh Hikmet al-Hajari. He's a well-known person now. He's one of the few, he reminds me always of the founding fathers of the United States, because many of them, they were religious, they were Christians, and they decided to form a secular constitution in Pennsylvania. He was kind of same thing. He got the same ideology. He is a cleric. He's a religious leader, but he said, we would love to have secular community, a secular regime. We don't want to live under al-Qaeda, which is a radical Islamist regime. Well, then they decided in July, after many attempts, to make the Druze people submit and comply, and Druze people refused. He said, form a secular constitution, form a secular regime, include all of the minorities, including Christians and Alawites, and even Kurds. They are Muslims, but they're kind of lighters or secular. They refused, and they decided to attack Druze Mountain to impose power or try to enforce them to comply. They sent their troops, the General Security Forces, the Defense Ministry Forces, and most of these groups, if you go and see the videos online, they are available on YouTube, on Facebook. Many of them were wearing ISIS badge. They were fighting with ISIS and al-Qaeda in Syria. And horrific things happened there. They started looting, burning houses, killing people, raping, slaughtering, and they came with Islamic slogans. And they were just calling for Druze people, we're going to convert you, we're going to force you to convert, and we're going to slaughter you. They were just blatantly telling people what they're going to do. Not only Druze, people don't know, Mount Druze has only Christians. We have Christian minorities. They burned 30 Druze temples and 6 churches. And I was watching a video yesterday. They were vandalizing with the biggest Christian cemetery in Soweto, near the south, the town of Saura. I can provide you with the videos later. So they came with death. They were bloodthirsty. They just wanted to kill people. And
Carlos?
then, yeah.
So, Carlos, Lawrence has a question here, and then we're going to go to Sarah.
Who's they? Like you say they were doing all these things. Who's they?
I don't want to generalize, but I would say Syrians, because 75% of Syria is Muslims, and most of those Muslims, I can't give you a number, but I would say at least 80% of them support the regime, which is al-Qaeda regime. It's called HTS. It's listed as a terrorist organization in Canada. If you go now to our federal government's website, and you would see HTS, which is Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or it's called in English, the Levant Liberation Organization.
So the
it is
al-Qaeda. So the people who came into Soweto, were they government forces, or were they?
They are government.
Else?
They are government. Absolutely government forces. Government forces supported by the tribes, or they call the tribal forces. They ask for people from many different provinces in Syria. They called the tribal forces, and they were non-government forces but associated with the government. They were armed by the government.
Okay.
So
Carlos, that's what's happening. That's still happening now in Syria. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct? Everywhere.
So let's turn to Sarah for a couple of minutes. Sarah is actually in Syria, and she's a medical student there. And I'm going to try to pronounce your last name. I'm probably going to get it wrong, Sarah. So I'll apologize now. But it's Sarah Swani?
Sinawi. Sinawi.
I wasn't even close. My apologies. So listen, thank you very much for joining us. Maybe you can tell us, your experiences, because you're there, you're on the ground while this is all going on.
Actually, I would like to start from the beginning. After the fall of Assad regime, there has been systematic political exclusion of all Syrian minorities, including Druze, Christians, Kurds, Alawites, all minorities. Later on, a campaign of incitement was directed against the Druze, especially against our leader, Sheikh Hikmat al-Hajari, because of his insistence on a vision of a civil, secular state. This stance triggered hostility toward our community. We even witnessed demonstrations calling for the extermination of the Druze, taking place all over Syria, and even in the universities. Also, Druze students were attacked. For example, in Aleppo University, one of our students was attacked, was stabbed actually, and no legal protection was provided. Also, the Syrian media played a deeply negative role through twisting the truth and fact distortion. So they fuel hatred against us.
So do you feel safe today while you're in Syria or when you're attending university?
No, we returned to Sweden and we leave the universities.
Sarah, what kinds of things did you witness on the ground at the worst of it? Carlos described the government forces coming in. You were there.
Yes.
What did you see, and how did you how did your people survive it?
There were actually ethnic, field executions. People were kidnapped. Women were assaulted. Also, we have 35 villages burned to the ground, and 175,000 people displaced from their homes, and now taking the schools as a shelter for them. Hospitals were attacked. I was volunteering in hospitals, and one incident that I experienced, I was in Shahba Hospital, a city called Shahba, when an extremist wearing explosives came to the hospital, but thank God, he was caught before it was too late.
Did anyone in the world come to help the Druze people, or were you just left on your own to deal with this?
Actually, we were left on by own. Through years, during the Assad regime, Sweda city was a shelter for others. We protected their women and children, provided them with food and medication, and welcomed them in our homes. On the other hand, they chose to return the favor by missiles and tanks, having their huge desire of extermination and ethnic cleansing.
So were you able to, were the Druze people armed and able to fight back? It's a tough neighborhood. You have Syria, Israel, and Lebanon right there. Hezbollah, whatever's left of them in Lebanon. Did anyone in the region come to help? Was there anything, or were you just on your own to deal with this onslaught?
Actually, the Israeli intervention, we would like to thank Israel for the intervention. Just Israel and Druze of Israel.
So just turning to you, Carlos, for a sec.
Yeah.
The government of Canada, they comment, of course, on different things going on in the Middle East. Some things that certain people, I certainly question, and other people question. Mm-hmm. What did Canada say, if anything? And as you know, Prime Minister Trudeau, the previous Prime Minister, he welcomed many Syrians into Canada in a previous war. And so what did the local Canadian Syrians say about what was going on to their fellow countrymen, the Druze?
They were acting actually very bad. It's shocking. I don't want to start talking about what the government did because I feel very ashamed, very disappointed, very frustrated. But I'm going to tell you something. When the regime fell, a friend of mine, she is in Winnipeg actually, and she works for she works for Aircom, I believe. She was organizing not a protest, kind of celebration in front of the legislature in Manitoba to celebrate the fall of Assad regime. I went with her, and there was another Christian friend who was coming from Quebec. He's a Syrian Christian, so we were representing minorities there. She is Christian as well. So when we were there, we were shocked how extremist they were. And this was in January. Like even not in January, I believe it was in December still, not January. We were shocked. I told her I'm not coming back, and I feel bad that I came here. So after that, when they started attacking minority provinces, I called her and we're trying to prepare a demonstration, a kind of protest in front of the legislature. They have Facebook groups between them, the locals here, like Syrian immigrants or Syrian refugees. A friend of mine, his friend is a Syrian Muslim, but he was friends with him. He was telling him those Druze people in Winnipeg, they are planning to make a counter strike to attack you if you go protest against the de facto regime. And he has proofs, and he got screenshots of their posts. It was very full of hate speech, and they were trying to threaten us, like people. He said, like, be careful. Those people are backing the previous regime, so we have to go to attack them. They are all minorities. Now, my friend got a business there. Like, even he is very scared to express his opinion because they will try to trigger and to turn every single Muslim person in Manitoba or in Winnipeg, because he's in Winnipeg, against us. So we don't feel safe here, like around Syrian Muslims, because they will try to hurt. Like even here, we are in Canada on the Canadian soil. Unfortunately, the government won't do anything because the government is not saying anything about them, which is shocking. I felt very betrayed as a Canadian citizen. So I thought my country and my government, or my second country, will stand for us, because we stand for human rights here, right? And we say we are supporting humane values. The Canadian government was supporting the terrorists instead. And I was shocked. In the month of February or March, Justin Trudeau declared that he is sending $84 million to support al-Qaeda regime. And I tried to investigate this. I found out they're still listed as a terrorist organization here. How come you go and support terrorists and you turn your back, or to turn the blind eye when minorities are persecuted, and we claim that we are supporting human rights, or we are defending minorities? Nobody actually looked after us. And you know what? We tried to report those people, Syrian people in Winnipeg. Nobody responded to that. Like nobody did anything.
So, Carlos, have you tried speaking to any members of parliament from the Dauphin area, from the Winnipeg area? Have you reached out to any of those members of parliament to try and let them know what's happening and get an answer from them about why they did what they did?
I tried to email Wapkino, but never responded. I tried. I thought, like, let me try, because someone told me try, but never responded to that. Mm-hmm. This is what I thought. Like. Mm-hmm.
Well, listen, I thank you so much for taking the time. I think we have to do more on this, learn more about what's going on there, and maybe we'll see a column from Lawrence Pinsky on this in the Winnipeg Sun.
I hope so.
Try to provide some information to people, because it's very disheartening to hear what you're saying, and Sarah, to hear what you're living through. Is terrifying, and I'm so sorry for you, but our thoughts are with you as you're there. You're a very strong people, both of you. So thank you very much for taking the time to join us on Inside Politics. Go ahead, Carlos. You have something? Go ahead.
Give me the chance. Like, I would like today to remember the victims of October 7. We are close to October 7. It's the second anniversary. We feel their families, and I hope the captives are still alive to get released soon. I hear good news. It seems like good news today. It meant a lot to us, and they are our brothers and sisters, and we feel bad for them. And I would like to say rest in peace to Charlie Kirk. I've heard many bad comments about his assassination here in Canada, and I don't want to go through that, but I will tell. So Charlie Kirk was a friend to Israeli Druze. He visited Israel many times, and we loved him, actually, because he stood for our values, for our family values. And I want to thank everyone who is standing for us from Israel to here in Canada as well.
Well, thank you very much. And again, thank you both for taking the time to be on Inside Politics.
And stay safe, both of you.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Thank you.
Goodbye, guys.
Thank you. Take care.
Goodbye.
Godspeed. Thank you. Bye.
So guys, we now interesting to hear what we just heard from our two guests, but it takes me back to a column that I wrote today, and I feel terrible that I'm going to have to look into more of this, and I'm thankful to you, Lawrence, for bringing this forward. But I was doing some research and found out about the Nigeria situation where it's the worst place in the world to be a Christian. And that's not my opinion. This is actually backed by years and years of data that more Christians are murdered for their faith in Nigeria than in the rest of the world combined. Yet here in Canada, again, another situation, we're not hearing anything from our politicians about this. They seem asphyxiated on one crisis, and that's it.
Asphyxiated, not fixated, but asphyxiated. No, you were right.
Yeah.
It is asphyxiated by one story. I think the numbers are hundreds of thousands of Christians murdered in Nigeria, hundreds of thousands. And we have people on the streets in Canada protesting about only one place, only against Israel, only about Gaza, where the world's leading expert on urban warfare says the ratio of civilians to combatants is about 1-to-1, and the numbers are way lower. Now, I don't want to get involved in an Olympics of pain, but it's inexplicable to me that in Canada and the United States and so many Western countries, there's only one conflict. There's only one place where all attention is focused when, as you say, in Nigeria, hundreds of thousands of Christians have been killed. In Canada, what is it, 135 or something churches have been burned to the ground, and nobody says a word. Even in the hate legislation, the amendments to the criminal code that the Carney government has proposed, now tabled in Parliament, when they introduced it, there was talk about anti-Semitism, great, Islamophobia, great, hate for LGBTQ people, fine, great. Nothing about hate targeting Christians. It's inexplicable to me.
Geoff, are you familiar with this? I mean, you're a well-read guy. I know that.
Peripherally, I think the point that we're sort of driving at here is that there are a number of cases, a number of situations globally that are underreported in the West. Certainly, the Syrian civil war was one of them, where close to 500,000 people were killed in that conflict. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, since the conflict has started there, about 1.5 million people, civilians, have died there, and the world pays no attention at all. I think that our attention span is limited. You referenced the war between Russia and Ukraine. How our attention has kind of fizzled on that. Our attention in the West is very, very limited. And Lawrence is correct that this is kind of a one-issue situation that we've got right now, and it's very complex. And we could spend, you can fill whole libraries talking about that situation and those ancient hatreds. But there are a number of cases and situations globally that don't get reported. There is no protest over the fact that China still illegally occupies Tibet. Nobody cares about that. Democratic Republic of Congo, people dying there every day. Women have to endure rape just to get to work, just because they have to go to work for the few pennies a day they earn, and they are sexually assaulted on a daily basis. These kinds of things are happening all over the world. And we've exposed one of those such stories here today. I'm glad we were able to do that.
Yeah,
Guys, the application of a double standard has a name. It's called prejudice. The fact that only one conflict is being covered, to the extent it has been covered, is absolutely prejudice. There's no other definition. When this is the crisis in Nigeria, we just heard about the situation in Syria with the Druze people, and I can't think of any other reason as to why there's only people on the streets. The media, CBC and mainstream media, covers but one thing and does it badly and prejudicially. it is in fact prejudice.
Yeah, when I was researching the Nigerian crisis and what was happening to Christians, it shocked me as somebody who's been in the media. I mean, I've been in government and I've been in the media, and I just have never heard of that, what was happening there. I'd never had an inkling of it whatsoever. And it shocked me, right? Because I try to make sure that I'm up on international news. I watch and read as much as I can or listen to what I can, but it just does not show up on the radar. And the Druze situation was not on the radar as well. And really, we have forgotten about the Ukrainian and Russian war. It's just kind of going on. It's like it's like we're kids. We have a short attention span. A squirrel walks by and we're like, oh, there's a squirrel. Or we're fixed on this one thing, as you said, Lawrence, of what's happening in Gaza, which is, I think, really disappointing. You know, as a person in media, I feel disappointed by that. Now, we don't have hours and hours to broadcast news and cover everything that's happening in the world, but we need to do a better job of informing people of the atrocities that are happening globally and here at home at the same time. As you said, we're having churches burned here and so on, which takes me to the thing that happened with Wab Kinew. We talked about the Charlie Kirk situation. There was a minister in Manitoba by the name of Nahanni Fontaine who reposted something on her Instagram that was very degrading to Charlie Kirk, saying she basically had no sympathy for the person. She apologized for that, but the same minister also, made derogatory comments about an American Sign Language interpreter that she had to share the stage with, that the hands were bothering her. And we've had stories in the Winnipeg Sun where she was calling a Métis veteran, according to this person, a little guy. And how dare he challenge her or question her. And there was going to be a protest at the Manitoba legislature. And the people were coming there to protest that Wab Kinew has not taken her out of cabinet. And here's what Wab Kinew said on the floor of the Manitoba legislature about those people.
Go tell the people who are going to gather here this afternoon that you should not be protesting a minister of the Crown's right to serve the people of Manitoba. And I would say to the goofballs out front, if you have an issue, you have an issue with me.
So what are your thoughts, Geoff? You've covered politics in Manitoba for a long time. What do you say to that?
Well, anytime a leader is that dismissive of some of the people that he is hired to represent, it reflects badly on him. The same thing happened to Justin Trudeau whether you agree with the protesters or not. The same thing happened to Justin Trudeau when the convoy got down to Ottawa, and he essentially dismissed these people as being un-Canadian. That you don't count, and any time a political leader says that or says something like that, I mean, that's the message. The message is you don't count. Your voice doesn't count. You don't matter. And it really reflects badly on any leader to do that. He doesn't have to agree with them. But at the same time, it would have been far more statesmanlike, because Wab Kinew likes to portray himself as a statesman. It would have been far more statesmanlike to invite a couple of the leaders of this protest into his office. Let's put our feet up on the desk, have a cup of coffee. All right, guys, let me know what you think. Okay, I might not agree with you, but people need to be heard. And that's, I think, one of the real frustrations for so many people now, is that they just don't feel that they're being heard. And violence, as I think Yandy once said, violence is the language of people who are unheard. And this is where it goes. If people feel unheard long enough, violence is going to be the end result.
Lawrence,
so we need to be careful about that.
Yeah. Sorry, Geoff. Lawrence, you had an interesting point about the words that Wab Kinew used, other than the goofballs, but you had some interesting thoughts on that.
Yeah, actually, my article in the Sun on Saturday will be about this, or Sunday if I'm too late, or today. And it's this. There's this obvious axis of ego that's happening within the NDP cabinet. We see it with Ms. Fontaine, and now we see it with the Premier. He said, he complained about people interrupting the right of the minister to be a minister, that Ms. Fontaine had a right to be the minister. And that's a complete misunderstanding of his role, the role of people in cabinet and government. But it betrays an arrogance that Ms. Fontaine also has shown over and over again. And it's really unacceptable. She doesn't have a right to be in cabinet. No. Cabinet is a position you earn. Cabinet is a position of respect, of ultimate trust. It's not something that you have a right to do because you're this or that. Now, I should be clear, as Kevin, you were in your article recently, that no one here, none of us condone any violence, any destruction of property. And I think Ms. Fontaine's office had some destruction of property there for whatever reason, and we don't know why. The police presumably will get to the bottom of it. But none of us are condoning that or encouraging that. That's a problem. But that has nothing to do with the fact that she has had more than 3 strikes. She should not be in cabinet. And when the premier said, if you have a problem with her, you have a problem with me, almost pounding his chest in some really violent display, almost a threatening display. Mm-hmm. And we remember he had a similar incident previously with Mr. Khan, who's now the leader of the opposition. This is really far beneath him. I agree with Geoff. He could have done something much smarter, much better. And I note as well, he called these protesters a bunch of goofballs. But when people are protesting in favor of Hamas with hammers and sickles or with masks on and threatening people, he calls that a right to demonstrate.
Well, listen, I'm also going to bring up at the time when I was the chair of the Winnipeg Police, before I was a cabinet minister, and a lot of Manitoba NDP party members who are now in cabinet were speaking in front of signs that said "F the police." I mean, never said anything about that protest either. He never said anything when they tore down the statue that is at the Manitoba legislature, right, was at, of Queen Victoria. Never said anything about that. In fact, I think he just said, this is what happens. And, you know, I think it's a slip. I think it's a big slip. And I agree with Geoff as well. He's a good statesman. He could have done much better on this one. But I think what he's done is they've taken a story that could have been lasted for a day, and now it's lasting for a month. And it's probably going to keep going because of what he's done.
But it reveals something. It reveals something about their thinking in cabinet in the NDP. And yes, when he controls the narrative, he has that smile that he's learned, and he can act like a statesman, but scratch the surface, touch him, it's a whole different ball game. And I've got to say, the leader of the opposition, Mr. Khan, I think did a really good job in the legislature. I watched that, and I thought he did a really good job. And when the premier went to allege some form of racism, I think Mr. Khan said, look at me, I'm a minority. What are you talking about? And he was spot on. I think Mr. Khan did a really good job with that. And I hope the premier walks it back and says, look, it was a heated moment. I don't think he will. He's revealed that doesn't seem to be his nature. I'm sorry to say that. I really would hope for better, because he does want to portray himself exactly as you said, Geoff, as a statesman. But we didn't see that.
Guys, I'm more concerned with the government's overall performance, because we're 2 years into this government's mandate, and the big promises was we're going to fix healthcare, we're going to fix homelessness, and we're going to balance the budget. And they're 0 for 3 on those big promises right now. That, to me, is, I mean, we've discussed Nahani Fontaine and how unfit she is to be holding public office. I mean, that train left the station. I think that's an obvious thing. But the big 3 promises that Wab Kinew and the NDP government, or when they were campaigning, made, they're striking out. They have not accomplished what they had set out to do. Now, they've got 2 more years to do it, but the early results are not very good.
I think you'll see Wab Kinew call a snap election next year. You know, it certainly would be strategically Smart on his part. You want to make sure you call a snap election, get another mandate because you don't want it to go that full 4 years. Put some announcements out there, start a couple of projects. It's almost like you see in Winnipeg with the mayor who's already running for election, making all kinds of promises and putting it through council, but nothing happens until 2027, until after the election in 2026. But you're right. But nothing has happened. He's made all kinds of promises and nothing has happened. But the same can be said for Mark Carney. And I don't want to pick on Mark Carney because I've had somebody saying, well, you just don't like him. It's not that I don't like him. He was supposed to be this guy that came in. He was going to be the adult in the room. Geoff, you've called him that several times. That's who he was supposed to be. He was supposed to fix the trade situation. He was supposed to help Canada economically. However, we talked about this last week when you were away. The parliamentary budgetary officer is sounding the alarm. He's saying we're in a lot of trouble. Yet Carney, is on this world tour. And I'm going to play a clip of Carney when asked by a reporter, because he was talking about all the great meetings they had with business people and all this and trade talks. Who did you meet with? Very innocent, but fair question. And here's what Carney said.
I think we share broad. It's a good question. Actually, don't know what we share, to be honest. I mean, how's that for an honest answer?
Can you tell us a few of the people you've met?
We met today with a number of infrastructure type investors. So people who have global capital invest around the world, largely in infrastructure projects. And the sense that what I was looking for was partly to tell the story of what we're doing in Canada, major projects, improving the tax system, moving forward fiscal responsibility.
So here you have a prime minister that spent, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars it cost for him to travel with his wife, but he can't even really tell you exactly who he spoke to or what he accomplished, Geoff.
Yeah, I think, the trade deals, these kinds of deals can often take a long time to materialize. And so you have to say, well, okay, maybe there's going to be some results down the road. But as with our provincial government, the early returns are not very promising. And I think when we see this budget coming down on November 4th, I think a lot of the parliamentary budget officers, he's now an interim parliamentary budget officer, his worst fears are going to be confirmed. I think we're going to be in far worse economic shape than the Prime Minister has wanted us to believe up to this point. I think we're in for some scary economic times. Hope I'm wrong, but I think I tend to trust the PBO's figures more than I trust the finance ministers. And the PBO has a better track record than the finance department when it comes to making these predictions.
Numbers don't lie, and when your GDP to debt ratio is worsening, you're going to have a problem, and a big problem. And Lawrence, you've talked about that. You've also talked about the fact that Carney is, making a lot of comments, but has no meaning to these comments, or no real, teeth. There's no teeth, no bite to what he's saying anymore.
It feels like a grift. I was hoping Geoff would come up with another seafood a metaphor. We didn't get that. Geoff, I'm saddened. But the reality is, if he went on the best trips over and over again, costing whatever they cost, but actually got the deal done, I wouldn't complain. It would be good for Canada. But in fact, and I think Mr. Poiliev has pointed this out, it seems that wherever he goes, increased tariffs follow, or some other trade disaster. It's not like he's winning anything. And I guess that's the problem. That's the grift, that he says certain things. He's supposed to be, as you said, the adult in the room. He's supposed to have all this. He does have a great CV. But where are the results? Where are the tangible results? Even when you look at, I first thought the agreement he reached with Indonesia is fantastic. But it's not really a solid deal. Mm-hmm. It's an agreement to have an agreement. And when you as the law would say, that's not binding. And when you look at how he answered the question that you just showed, his mannerisms are inconsistent with credibility. Maybe I can put it that way. And so,
well, that's charitable, Lawrence. That's charitable.
It's as charitable as I'm going to get this afternoon. But that's what it was, and it's really disappointing. In Manitoba, we have a 3-alarm fire because, as Geoff, as you said, every single metric that the NDP promised has failed. Our wait times are higher, hospitals are worse off, the economy is worse off. What do we have? A $1.3 billion deficit. It was supposed to be, I think, 750 million or so. So it's higher than anticipated, would be even higher still, but for transfer payments that Alberta is challenging. Alberta is saying, we don't want to pay this anymore, quite rightly from their perspective, because Manitoba keeps our resources in the ground. We make certain choices. We subsidize certain things at Alberta's expense. Same for Quebec. So there is major trouble coming down the line. I wish it wasn't so. And I don't see Mr. Carney fixing it. The odd thing to me is some business people believe his rhetoric instead of his lack of actions. And that I find really troubling, that they're not taking that analytical, really, it's not much of a dig. It's not very deep to say, really, well, what are the successes? And the same thing is true of Mr. Canoe. Where are the successes? It's 2 years in.
Yeah. And we're not seeing many of those successes, but what I am seeing, and I wanted to talk about this a little bit, is a trend. And I don't know if it's on purpose or if I'm just, making this up in my head, but I saw a tweet from the Prime Minister's X account, formerly Twitter, where he was talking about all these great trade deals that are coming together with other countries around the world and how we're growing, our economy is getting better, we're getting stronger. He was almost taunting the United States. And it was interesting that came out after the announcement that he was going to be meeting with Donald Trump to talk about trade. Because I would expect that from Trump, right? Oh, we're going to make you the 51st state. We're going to do this. He starts throwing things around. I've got the greatest ideas in the world. I wouldn't expect it from Carney. Now, it wasn't as grandiose, but it seemed pretty pointed to me, like he's trying to set the tone. And I don't know if that's going to work in negotiations with the United States.
Mr. Trump is a famed negotiator. We've said this for ages. The guy who was able to deal successfully with Deutsche Bank and every major financial institution out of the depths of bankruptcy, you can't grift him. He is the major grifter of any leader, and he does it to great success from an American interest perspective, not a Canadian interest perspective. If Mr. Carney is successful with it, that would be fantastic. The likelihood, I think it's more likely that you'll find me playing center on the Toronto Raptors than that he will have success with that strategy. Those of you who know me in person know how unlikely that is.
Geoff, what are your thoughts?
Well, dealing with Donald Trump is, it's a fool's errand. Trying to go down and expect that you're going to get a reasonable conversation or anything reasonable coming out of the guy. But as we've said before, Mark Carney was the guy who said he could get it done. So, all right, Mr. Carney, the ball is in your court. This is going to be your second trip down to Washington to meet with the president. You better come home with something this time. You can't come home empty-handed again.
Yeah, I think that you're absolutely right. I think this is kind of like you're on the edge now. I mean, you've called the meeting. You said it's going to kickstart the talks. You're going on and on about trade. We saw, him down in Mexico talk a lot about trade, but to Lawrence's point, nothing really came from it. There's no deal in place. We're not going to see more money. We are seeing investment continue to leave Canada. We saw a huge announcement in the news. I don't know if either of you gentlemen saw them. There's a large General Motors plant in Oshawa, Ontario, that is laying off a number of people, and they're moving the jobs down to the U.S. And I think as that happens, that could be the economy, or it could be what's happening between Canada and the United States. But you're right, Geoff. Carney needs to actually hit the ball this time when he's at bat. Reminds me of the Billy Bean, the Moneyball movie, when everyone thought he was the greatest ball player. He was going to be the greatest, rookie ball player in history, and he couldn't hit the ball. You know, he had no success when he got to the big leagues, and I think our very own Billy Bean is Prime Minister Mark Carney, and I'm hoping I'm incredibly wrong. I'm hoping I'm incredibly wrong. But, you know, thanks very much for this discussion. I'm glad that we had the opportunity to speak to the two guests we had, Carlos and Sarah. Lawrence, thanks for arranging that to learn a little bit more about what's happening in other parts of the world, especially Syria. I also want to say thanks for your articles in the Winnipeg Sun. You can read their articles at winnipegsun.com. Royce is sick today. He's never usually sick, but he was sick today. I'm sure he'll be back next week. So in his honor, we want you to smash the like button and smash the subscribe button. Gentlemen, have a great weekend. I look forward to reading your columns.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching Inside Politics with Kevin Klein. Please like and subscribe to this channel and visit thewinnipegssun.com for more.